Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is episode number 64 of the Sports Consiglieres Podcast. My name is Jim Whalen. 64, I think it's safe to say Jim Burt. Brad, we just try to name a giant with a number. But our next guest is a 11-year vet of the NFL. We highlighted some players in the 80s, but really didn't get anybody from our next guest era. He was in 2 Super Bowls with the Buffalo Bills and with the Giants. Hails from Valhalla High School. Didn't really play college football until later on in life. Played soccer. He started off, I guess, at San Diego State and then went to Grossmont College, correctly. But it's our pleasure to introduce to you Brad Daluiso. Brad, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for joining. It's preseason, so we figured we start getting some football shows in. And thanks for reaching out to us, and thanks for being accommodating to us. Really appreciate the time.
Love it. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and happy to be here.
So just talk a little bit. I kind of delved into people's childhood. I mean, you grew up as a soccer player, Southern California. Great weather, and then. How did your soccer journey kind of turn into your football journey?
It's a good question. I grew up playing soccer, like you said, born and raised in San Diego. Played soccer my entire life. Went to San Diego State as a freshman, straight out of high school, with the plan of trying out for the soccer team the next year. In San Diego, especially with some of those state schools, it's tough to get classes. So a lot of people will kind of slide over and take classes at the local, junior college. Grossmont was right next door to San Diego State. So I did that for a couple of years. Played soccer there my second year out of high school. And every day on my way to soccer practice, we'd drive by the football field. And I had a buddy who knew the kicker. And he said, "Hey, that guy went to my high school. That's something you should think about trying." I had a big leg. Obviously, I had a big leg. And that was and that's what kind of started it. So I just kind of walked on and wound up kicking off that year, and then transferred to UCLA. I was going to transfer anyway, either to UCLA or Santa Barbara. And I decided to go to UCLA and wound up playing there for a couple of years.
Did they recruit you, or you just walked it on? Like, were you kind of like a preferred recruiter, or just kind of like walked on cold and that was it? Here I am.
At Grossmont, I just walked, at a school like that, they I don't know how many people they could have on the team. They could probably have 200 if they had enough guys. So there was no kind of make the team there. It was just go get a uniform and the game is on Saturday type of thing. Once I got into UCLA because I was going to transfer anyway, and then it made it really easy to walk in there and say, "Hey, I'm into school. I've got 2 years of eligibility left. I'd love to walk on," and they let me do that. And the kickoffs kind of spoke for themselves, and I wound up playing.
Well, I mean, that's great. But Jerry, I'll pass it along to you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Yeah, Brad, listen, thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on. I'll start with this. I get into a little history here. So I'll never forget 93. I'm in high school. The Giants were down the previous 2 years. They bring in Dan Reeves, who you had some familiarity with from Denver.
Yep.
And you came in with David Treadwell. You were a kickoff specialist. And then, boy, I'm not a gambler. If I was a gambling man, I would have lost a lot of money, 54 yards against the Cardinals in a typical Giant Stadium win. And And I think, I don't know who was more excited, you or Joe DeCamillis.
Yeah.
I'll never forget his reaction. I remember, and I actually reviewed this before we had you on, because I remember it like it was yesterday. Dan Reeves was basically trying to calm everybody down because there was still like 30-something seconds left after he made that kick. But the relief in Joe DeCamillis' face was unbelievable. And that was like, I would say, your first big moment, right? And then the following year, I mean, David Treadwell kind of kicked his way out against the Browns, and that kind of like set your career off. So my question to you is, first of all, thank you so much. I mean, that was a big moment in 93, especially for me being a Phil Simms guy. That was kind of his resurgence, if you will, lagging for the 2 years under Ray Hanley. Dan Reeves comes in, really creates a culture. So what was it like for someone to be in, considering you were with Coach Reeves for 2 spots? What was it like playing for Coach Reeves?
Coach Reeves was fantastic, and he was great to me, and he really gave me my start. I played the previous year before Denver in Buffalo. And obviously that was a very, very good team. And all they really needed was somebody to kick off. Scott Norwood wasn't super strong.
Yeah.
He did fine on the field goals. Maybe not so fine the year before, but he did fine on field goals. And they just needed a guy to kick off. But when I got to Denver, after I had gotten released from the Cowboys, where they wound up keeping Lynn Elliott, Dan was the first coach that really said to me, you're going to kick off. You're going to keep working on field goals. You're good enough to do this. You just don't have the experience. And he really kind of built me up from that point on like that. And so the kickoffs were easy for me, and the kickoffs kept me on the team. But Dan kind of never lost faith. And, he would always let me kick in practice. Often, the coach will go, he's the starter, Tread's the starter. He's going to get all the reps, but he would give me reps. He helped me get better kind of while the season was going on. And he's what got me rolling. And so obviously coming to New York was huge. Great that he brought me there. And then just, fortunate to be able to, when I did get my chance there, fortunate to obviously make the 54-yarder the year before. And then after that, when I got my chance, just kind of step in and do it.
Yeah. And then just going back, Reeves really it was unorthodox to have two kickers on the team.
Yeah.
And it was also, I guess he got beat up for it, but it was also looking at it. I guess a mastery of Dan Reeves as a player and a coach, just field possession. You were able to pin the team back and really gave them an opportunity. So it was like a new concept, really having two kickers on the roster, because they're like, why use a roster spot for having two kickers? So
right. Don't quote me on these numbers, but it was, and Dan, you're absolutely right. And Dan said something, and Joe DeCamillis, we were talking about it, and he said, we figured out I forget what the number of points were that the kickoff saved by having them start at the 20 versus starting at the 33 or whatever the league average was. You're saving us, and again, I'm kind of making the numbers up, you're saving us 18 points. If you miss 5 field goals during the year that maybe you should have made, whatever, where this is going, you're only costing 15 points. And his thing was, big picture, the field position at the time was more valuable than a couple missed field goals here and there. I think as it turned out, not to, pat myself on the back, as it turned out, once I did get the job, we didn't sacrifice accuracy for strength. But at that point, we definitely would have. And that's what kind of kept Tread around. And Dan's super loyal. He was super loyal to me, and he was super loyal to Tread as well, which is great. It kept David in the league for another couple of years, and it kept me in the league for a couple of years before I could kind of get my career rolling. So I think Dan did look big picture, which was great. I know Jimmy Johnson later, when we talked about it, kind of thought the same thing, but I think he was a little too late. Dan got me earlier.
But I remember sitting in the game. I'm a season ticket holder. On a kickoff, you hit it through the uprights, and I was like, everybody in the fans was like, "Oh, imagine!" And the guy behind me was like, "Hey, that's 3 points." So it was but it just
should at least be one, right?
Yeah, exactly. But with the rule changes now, are you kind of with the NFL and the new kickoff rules? Are you kind of it takes something away? I know they're talking about player safety, but what's your take on the new rule changes that they have now?
I first off, I get it, and the goal is to keep guys as safe as they possibly can. Early on, they didn't want touchbacks. Nobody got touchbacks. Guys like me came in, and you start bombing kickoffs, and you get a lot of touchbacks, and that's the Dan Reeves and the Jimmy Johnsons of the world love it. It's not super exciting. And it's not an exciting football play. So they come out with the K ball, they lower the kickoff tee, they move us back to the 30 instead of the 35. And they kind of change those rules, and touchbacks definitely came down. And then all the studies come out, right? And it's the most dangerous play in football. And you got guys colliding at 30 miles an hour, and it's just really not a safe play. So then they went back to, and this is kind of after my career, you see the balls are all broken in. They're not really K balls anymore. guys are absolutely bombing it through the back of the end zone, and the league is getting, that safety back that they wanted. But again, it's a pretty boring play. So I understand, the new rule. It's funny. I get it. I certainly watch it. It's a very different play. I notice that they're getting collisions again, because now you're putting guys in a position where they can kind of hang the ball up there to the left or to the right. And you're getting returns again, even though you're not getting the collisions because the guys aren't, starting 30 yards apart from each other. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see over time if it's a much safer play than it used to be, because I think that's the ultimate goal. And I don't think the NFL wants to just do away with the kickoff, right? That would just, to me, that's kind of weird.
Well, that's, they said they got to keep the foot in football,
Exactly.
You gotta, so
At some level, yeah.
But I don't know if you still watch the game, but like Cam Little from Jacksonville, he hit a 70-yarder. I mean,
I saw that.
back in your day, would you be able to hit a 70-yarder, or was it kind of frowned upon because getting back of that field position?
I've always sworn that I would never, get old and be one of those guys that says, like the golfers comparing Tiger to Jack and all this stuff. It's not. I was the strongest when I played, and I probably would have been one of the strongest now, but the guys now are better trained. They're more accurate, bigger, faster, stronger with all the technology. They're all on launch monitors like the golfers are. They're maximizing everything about the swing. And so they hit it further than we did. We didn't try 54 yards like back in the day. That was a long field goal. You didn't try 58 yarders. Now they're throwing guys out, before the end of the half, and they try 62 yarders and 65 yarders, and it's no big deal. And the guys have just gotten so good. I think better athletes, bigger, faster, stronger technology. I think the ball is bigger than it was. You see the ball on TV and it's chocolate brown and looks really, really big with a big sweet spot. So ball goes far.
Yeah.
Now, back in
fantastic.
In your day.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Brett. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, it's pretty interesting. I remember seeing when I came into the league, I think that at the time, Rolf Benerschke was one of the most accurate guys in the league, and he was basically a 70% field goal kicker. I retired as the Giants' all-time most accurate, which didn't put me at the top of the all-time greats, but I think I was 76-ish%. And now I think kind of the guys are making 86%. And then, of course, the Pro Bowlers are making 90+%. Yeah. So it's just gotten more and more specialized, and the guys have just gotten much better.
Yeah, because Tom Dempsey held that record for years. Right. 60. But anyway, I'll pass along to Jerry. Jerry, I know you had a question. So
that's what I was going to touch upon, Brad. So back in, when you were coming into the league, you were like a unicorn, like a kickoff specialist, because like you said, Benerschke, a coach, was willing to put up with short kickoffs.
Right.
Because at the time, like that was a good percentage, but like compared to when you came into the league and now, like besides the technology, like how many balls, like for example, like in a regular season, how many balls are you kicking in practice leading up to the game?
That's a good question. And in so many comparisons to golf, I like to think that practice always had a purpose, right? It wasn't just let's go out and bang 50 balls. And if you go in and somebody says, how'd you kick today? You really have no idea. I'd rather kick 25 balls where I'm kicking 5 groups of 5, and I'm writing down, where they went, what the ball flight looked like. So you can really measure kind of how your practice went. And I think that's so much more valuable than just going out and hammering a bunch of balls. Obviously football wears you down, and it wears the kickers down too. You don't want to go out 4 days a week and kick 100 balls. That's really hard on your body. So, kind of thoughtful practice, ramping up towards the game. For me, it was always obviously no kicking Monday, no kicking Tuesday, big day Wednesday, big day Thursday, light day Friday, nothing Saturday, game Sunday. I'd say to kind of answer your question, I'd say field goals on Wednesday, Thursday. Obviously, you warm up, probably hit 20 balls. in practice, you probably hit 6 balls, you hit a couple kickoffs. Kickoffs are what really kind of wear you down. So, and usually Dan and Coach Fassel were good about not just having me bang kickoffs, all day just because the guys wanted to receive, kickoffs. So probably hit, 6 kickoffs during the week with the team. And for me, obviously I didn't need to do a lot of work on kickoffs. I just needed to be healthy. So when I kicked off, it would do what it was supposed to do.
Now, I want you to be a little modest now. How many guys in the league now could handle the old Giant Stadium wind?
I don't know. They probably all can. I think leg strength, I know they all can. Leg strength really helped there because you could hit the ball hard and keep it on a line. I always felt a little better than the guys that were just kind of purely technique and kind of popping it up there. The wind can really affect it. If you can really drive it into the wind, it's helpful. The guys now, like I said, are all so strong. And the ball's coming off their foot at a perfect angle. All those guys are just so good, but I managed it, and I'm proud of that, played there a long time. And not a lot of guys in that stadium have longevity. Right. So I was pretty proud of the fact that I could I certainly wasn't perfect, but I could go in there and manage that environment in leg strength, and had a lot to do with that.
And I know you were at Buffalo in '91. I was a year after the Giants won the Super Bowl. Scott Norwhite, he missed the kick, but I think that that'll forever go down in NFL history. But going into that season, and how was it dealing with Scott Norwhite? It was Norwood. I should say Norwhite, because Giants say Norwhite, but it's Norwood. I don't want to, but how was it, working with him after missing a big kick? Did you see athletes? They didn't really some don't really recover, but I mean, he was a very good kicker.
Yeah,
very good kicker, and it just missed that one memorable kick. So.
Scott was a really nice guy, and Scott's a quiet guy, and I obviously feel terrible for him, and I think most of the world feels terrible for him, except the folks in New York, New Jersey. Yeah. But you wouldn't really wish that on anyone, and that's tough. And he's a quiet guy, and when I got there, he was still a quiet guy. He probably wasn't super happy that they brought a kickoff guy in, and obviously he's thinking at the time, they're bringing this guy in to take my job. And we all know how that works. He was a good guy. He was good to me. Tread and I became really good friends, and we hung out together, and we did stuff together, and we worked together, and we kicked together all the time, and talked about, how can Tread get a little more pop, and how can I be a little more accurate? And we really, kind of cheered each other on that way. Scott and I didn't have that, but, he had just missed a big kick in the Super Bowl, and I was a rookie coming in, fresh out of UCLA. And so probably that type of relationship wasn't going to happen. Good guy. I don't know what he's doing now. I want to say he's maybe an insurance salesman or something like that. I'm not sure, but tough luck, obviously.
Now you come to the Giants, Coach Reeves, prior, he brings a lot of guys, a few, more than a few, from Denver. What would you say was the biggest adjustment? Because the Giants there, they went from Parcells to 2 years of Ray Hanley. So then Coach Reeves comes in. What do you think was the biggest adjustment for the guys that been there, when he arrived?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. And I didn't know any of those guys. I didn't know Ray Hanley. I didn't know Coach Parcells. Know him a little bit now. He used to always come chat with me when I was warming up to try and get in my head. But I think with Dan, you got consistency, right? And I think he brought stability certainly to the organization. That's always what I felt with him. He was in control of that locker room. He was in control of that team. I think the team really needed that at the time. I know he came in and made some big changes, and that's getting rid of, the Pepper Johnsons and the Matt Bars, and that's tough. Takes a lot of nerve to do that.
Sure.
that bar and bring in David Treadwell and Brad Daluiso. And, that one worked out. And Matt was at the end of his career, but, that's tough to do. But I give him a lot of credit for doing it, especially on a team like that. But I think guys certainly respected him. Dan was respected anywhere he went.
But that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I remember, now here's Phil Simms, played for Ray Perkins, played for Parcells. And I remember a while back watching, and they asked Phil Simms a question about like accountability and culture in the locker room. And I was surprised. He referenced 93, and his memory from 93 was first meeting they had. Dan came in, feet off the desk, basically be a professional. Like you said, I'm in charge. This is the way it's going to go. And I just found it, I found it interesting that here's a guy that played for, two guys that were really known, as generals, if you will. And, he really gave Coach Reeves, his props, so to speak, that was really needed. And, the whole thing about, and I'm sure you heard this when they were referring to the Giants at the time as the New Jersey Broncos. And like Phil Simms said, he goes, he didn't come there because changes didn't need to be made. He made the changes that needed to be made, institute the culture that needed to be created. And unfortunately, it would have been nice to see him have a little bit more sustained success. But, that 93 season, that was a real shot in the arm, to Giant
it really
fans,
was.
Giant organizations.
Yeah. And I was thinking about our conversation, having this conversation today. And I was thinking about kind of my 10 years, 11 years and what stood out and what my favorite seasons were. That 93 season was pretty amazing. Phil Simms and LT still there, and a lot of the old guys, obviously with my head coach from Denver and some new guys, and we had some success. And it was just a fun year. And I think everybody, it was a great year for everyone. And to see Dan come in and have that kind of success, because I don't think everybody thought necessarily, the Southern guy was going to be able to come in and handle the big city. And he did, and I give Dan a lot of credit for, he wasn't a hard ass. He kind of looked like one, you got to love that, he had the Landry look, obviously, and wears the suit. Mm-hmm. Good looking older guy. But he was a player's coach. He wasn't grinding us, and he wasn't a ball buster. He was super fair. You just kind of did things his way, but it was fair, and guys rallied. He didn't beat us down. That's for sure.
I think it's a great story too, because that year he won Coach of the Year. And people forget he was the third choice that year.
Really?
Tom Coughlin was interviewed first. He stayed at BC. Then they wanted Wannstedt, coming off the success in Dallas. He chose the Bears, and then they went with Dan Reeves. And it's a great story. He was Coach of the Year. Simms made the Pro Bowl. And like you said, nobody saw you guys winning 11 games that year.
Right. Yeah. And just think, if Dan had stayed in Denver, I'd probably still be kicking. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. But him and Elway, I guess it was a fractured relationship. So I think that they were like, from what I remember, is that they were, I don't know, or the media was reporting, whether it happens in the locker room, as a player. But I think that, I think they both needed a change at the head coach. And for Giants fan living through the Ray Hanley years, it definitely brought life back into the franchise. So,
right. No, it was great. And I was just thrilled to be there for 4 years with him. And then it was really, it was almost like a breakup. I was always the one that got, early on in my career, it was always me that got cut, not my coach. And then all of a sudden, in New York, Dan leaves after 4 years, and I'm in the middle of a contract, and I'm like, shoot, this is my guy.
Yeah.
This is the guy I'm used to playing for, because I played for him for 8 of my 10 years, which is great. No, that's not right. Yeah, 4 in New York and 1 in Denver, 5 of 10 years.
And then Coach Fassel comes in, and I think it's ironic, right? He comes in, and in his first year, he wins Coach of the Year. Same thing. Giants have a really good year. They win the division, a very bad, very, very, very tough way to end the season there against Minnesota, at home in the playoffs. But it's ironic, both guys you played for the Giants with the Giants, both of them were coaches of the year, in their first season. What was it like with Coach Fassel coming in?
Coach Fassel was great, and it's just so interesting for me because I was just in such a different point in my career. I was kind of established. I was part of the organization. I was having success. So I didn't really feel like, oh boy, this new coach is coming in, is he going to run me out of town? I would have felt like that 5 years prior. So it was good. And I was coming off a really good year. I really struggled at the beginning of Coach Fassel's first year. And, Dan's last year, I finished really hot and then had a really good preseason. And I think Jim Fassel's going, wow, we've, maybe got the best guy in the league. And then I started off just really bad. And thankfully, he stuck with me. And, I got the dreaded, what do they call it? The dreaded vote of confidence, in the newspaper. Oh, Brad's our guy.
Yeah.
That means you're a couple misses away.
Yeah.
So, Coach Fassel was great to me, and had a good 4-year run with him. And then, and then he built that. Obviously, we had one great year, and then he built that up, over the next few years. And we had the great run with Kerry. And unfortunately, I've followed around. I've been part of 2 teams. So I always tell my friends, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. I was just unlucky with Buffalo, and then again unlucky with the Ravens, who were just so good that year.
Yeah, well,
I think too that was that's a very in my opinion, that's the most underrated period there in Giant history. That 2000 team is often forgotten. Matter of fact, I actually have a plaque of that team in my basement because, again, it was a good run. Nobody expected, you guys to pick apart is the right word. One of the greatest offenses of the day. Yeah. I mean, and let alone, shut them out and then blow them out. And Kerry Collins, for those few years, he was on another level.
Yep, he sure was. And man, that game, we obviously scored. It was fast and furious. Kerry looked over at me, and I think it was 21-0 or 24-0. It was first half for sure. Mm-hmm. And he said, "We are going to roll it up on them today. They don't stand a chance." And it was just the greatest game. I think it's one of the best games that was ever played in that stadium.
I agree.
It's got to be up there. Yeah, I mean that was a great game. So,
well, considering the opponent and what was at stake, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm still mad we tried a field goal when it's 41-0, and I'm like sitting on the sideline, snapping towels with all my buddies, and we have 4th and something, and Fassel yells field goal, and I'm thinking field goal.
Yeah.
What are we kicking a field goal for?
I
hit the upright.
But I guess you're coming off an injury, I guess, in 99. And was that the 2000 year? So how was the rehab? And, you had 7-8 years in the league. Did you think like this was going to be it? Like, because, having an ACL tear and as a kicker, but like, how did you come back from the injury and then have that successful season?
Well, it was I had a decent year statistically, but I wasn't the same. That basically ended my career. I went from, I don't know this for sure, but I'm pretty sure leading the league in kickoffs for 9 years in a row. I have no idea, but I'm pretty sure I did, to being, I think I had 2 touchbacks that year in 2000. So, my kickoffs basically, I always say, if you're ranking everybody on a scale of 1 to 10, I was a 10 kickoff guy, and I was probably a 7 or an 8 field goal guy. And I went to being a 4 or a 5 kickoff guy. And, field goals were about the same, but I didn't have the deep range, but accuracy was about the same. And there are a lot of guys in the league that can kick like that. So, you're going to get run out pretty quick. So I was pretty broken down, even though I played one more year. My knee was pretty bad. I've had 5 surgeries on that knee.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But I wouldn't trade it. My kids were young. My family was here in San Diego. I came home when my career ended, obviously, and it all happens for a reason, right? So if I had stayed healthy, I mean, shoot, I don't know, I could have played another 7-10 years, and who knows? Then maybe you don't know your kids. Maybe it's a whole different world. So
right, everything happens for a reason, right?
Yeah, it happened for a reason.
Now, with Coach Fassel and those years, would you say like Are you still in touch with any of your ex-teammates, like from one particular era, if you will, than the other?
I stay in touch with Dave Brown. I stay in touch with Brad Maynard. Who else? Stan White a little bit, backup quarterback.
Yeah, sure. Auburn. Yeah.
I actually, I'll talk to Stray every once in a while. That's about it. You know who I'll talk to Kerry every once in a while, but you know who I stay in touch with is Ronnie Barnes.
Okay.
Kickers and trainers get to hang out together because kickers don't have anything to do during the day. So Ronnie and I are just, lifelong friends and to this day. And so I talk to him all the time. I'll be going out. I'm going to go to the Kansas City game. Probably stay. My wife's going with me and we'll probably stay with Ronnie one night. So Ronnie's
nice.
Ronnie's Giants were great.
Brad, we're praying for 1-1 by week 3.
Yeah. So who do you have with Kansas City?
We got Washington, Dallas, and then KC, as you know, in prime time.
Oh man!
And then the Chargers in week 4 come to New Jersey, and a friend of mine is a Chargers fan, and I told him, I said, we might be 0-3 by the time we fit, and he goes, don't worry. He goes, and he rattled off some stat on how bad the Chargers are on a 1:00 game.
Oh,
so I said, all right. I said 1-3 then, but.
We don't talk about the Chargers in San Diego anymore. So.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you. Yeah, growing up in San Diego, was that very strange move? I could see L.A. L.A. had some roots there, but it was a long time when the Chargers played in L.A. and I understand it was a business decision, but I mean, growing up in San Diego, I still say San Diego Chargers. But what was your take on that move from?
I think it was horrible, and it's the community was gutted. The good news is, everybody's rallied around the Padres and everybody's, and myself included, and we're having a blast watching our baseball team. But that football team should have never left, and nobody, LA doesn't want them. UCLA is a bigger deal in LA than the Chargers are. Like they shouldn't be there, and it shows in the community. I used to be a huge Charger fan. And then obviously I'm a life loyal Giants fan. And I don't really care what the Chargers do. I don't watch the games. I don't really care.
Well, if you look at the stadium, it's half visiting fans. I know, with the secondhand market and everything, but they don't have that fan base.
No.
So.
And then, and the stadium's not full. You go to a Raider game and that new great stadium and that place is packed. It might be half Green Bay fans, but it's still packed. And it's a lot like that with the Padres too. We have Petco Park, which is such a great venue and such a great place to visit. We don't care if we get 10,000 opposing team, fans. It's still packed and everybody's having fun. You go to a Charger game, which I've never been to, go to a Charger game and the stadium's half empty and the folks that are there aren't even Charger fans. I think it's disgraceful.
They lost their identity. It's a shame.
Sure did.
Yeah.
They got the best uniforms in football, and they got to play up in LA.
Yeah,
I agree.
But I know after that, I guess you tried to go with Oakland. You made it go with it at Oakland, and then your career ended. What happened? I know you're in finance now. You're Morgan Stanley, and I don't want to give us any stock tips because I don't want to be sued. But how did you? Yeah,
you're not going to get sued. It's so funny you say that. So I was in the office this morning, and we were having our little morning team meeting. And I said, hey, I'm doing this podcast. And I go, and everybody looked at me like, oh my God, what are you going to talk about? And I go, no, it's a football deal. And we were just laughing because, our business is so compliance regular. And I asked, I go, do you think they're going to care if I do this in the office? And they're like, not as long as you don't talk about work, they don't care. So I wasn't worried about you guys getting sued for stock tips. It's
okay. All right. You're the one with the Series 7, so you got you got more to lose.
Brad, so. I'm not going to lie to you. I'd rather talk to you about that 54-yard field goal anyway than getting
exactly. Yeah.
It's way more fun to talk about.
Yeah. Absolutely. And remember, listen, I know I keep referencing this. That kept us in first place at the time.
It did, and it probably got Joe Bugle fired, right? I think.
Correct. That was one of the many, many bad moments that he had such bad luck that year. It was a few moments.
Yeah. Nice guy. I met him at some golf tournament, and somebody said, "Hey, Coach Bugle, I'd like to introduce you." And they got like half of Brad out, and he's like, "I know."
Yeah.
That was a fun day. Fun day to be a Giant.
But for yourself, after your playing career ended, how did you like? I mean, obviously you're still connected to it's like a fraternity, but how did you like? What did you do after? Because I think most people for 11 years you had an identity, and then you lose that. Most people, it's hard for them to kind of start a second career, especially having that adrenaline rush of 70,000 people. So how did you find that work you're doing now? Or
well, you don't think putting together a financial plan for a high net worth family is quite as exciting as no? I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I was super fortunate. My advisor when I was playing became a friend. He's 80 now. I'm 57, so he was older than I was. He had gray hair. He wore glasses. He was raising this nice family. He got to play a lot of golf. And I said to him, kind of, halfway through my career, I'm like, what do you do? Like, what do you do every day? And he kind of explained it, and we talked about it. And I said, that sounds interesting. We've been friends ever since. And he basically hired me the day that I retired.
Oh, wow.
And so I've been there now since I retired in 2001, technically, and I've been there since 2001.
Wow.
And so it was kind of a progression. So I was a client with the firm for 10 years, and I've been working there now for 24 years.
Oh, wow. And then have you helped any players along the way? Because, I mean, there's a
great question. When I retired, of course, everybody comes in with the plan, and I'm sure that's why my guy, hired me. You think, oh, it's just going to, football players will be, just coming through the door. The reality is we're bad clients. We spend too much. We don't make enough, and we don't make it for long enough. So they're in San Diego. We're fortunate we have a kind of a food beverage niche in our business. And there's a lot of life science and biotech in San Diego, and entrepreneurs and folks that are selling companies. And so there are better clients here in town than the athletes, in my opinion, are.
Yeah.
And so we don't have a big athlete stable. We have a few, but not many. To be honest, I'd rather work with the business folks.
Awesome. Yeah, Brad, listen, we really appreciate you coming on.
It's my pleasure.
It was great. And
I'd like to have you on maybe during the season.
Oh, come on anytime.
Yeah. Well, listen, and I know you reached out to me a couple months ago, and I appreciate you, and then we worked around the time frame on it. I really appreciate it.
You mean when you sent me a message and then I replied back to you, I think 8 months later?
Yeah, well, that's all right. But listen, it's part of the business. So
you're like, God, that Daluiso, what an ass. He never replied back.
Well, listen, Keith Elias sent me an email on like New Year's Day or something like that. I said, so I just try to, but I reached out because the memories we had as a Giant, and that time, 93, like it was, going from high Super Bowl to Ray Hanley years. It was like, and then, you just being a part of Dan Reeves. I mean, that was a magical, like Jerry said, it was a magical time in New York sports. But I mean, and I know you also do some charity work. I guess you have a golf classic too. So it looks like you're staying in shape playing golf too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I like riding mountain bikes. I'm on a mountain bike a lot. Play a lot of golf and work, and have a really nice family. And so just really fortunate. And it's all a lot of that is thanks to the Giants.
Yeah, well, I mean, it looks like he could still play, but I usually pass it off to Jerry. But this episode was produced by our favorite Cowboys fan, Dave.
There's no such term.
But anyway, I know you had a little cup of coffee with the Cowboys, but
I did.
But anyway, I appreciate the time, Brad. I really, and thanks for the memories. But this episode was produced by Dave Sturchio's Chop Sports Media. But Jerry, this is episode number 64.
Take care, Brad. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I'll do it again anytime.
Thanks, Brad. And
thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Take care.